God apparently decided that the two most stubborn men on the planet needed to keep playing soccer until their 40s. Nobody asked for this. Nobody, absolutely nobody is complaining either. Messi is 38, Ronaldo is 41. Between them, they have 5 World Cups, 12 Ballon d'Or awards, and according to several doctors over the years, bodies that should have slowed down a long time ago. They haven't. And here's the part that no sports channel is covering right now. The reason has almost nothing to do with science, training, or diet. The reason is faith. And the story behind it will change the way you see both of them forever. North America, June 2026. 50 stadiums, 48 nations, 104 matches. The biggest, loudest, most watched soccer tournament in history. And somehow, impossibly, the two men everyone came to see are the same two men who were here in 2006, in Germany, 20 years ago. Lionel Messi moves through this tournament like a man who has already made peace with the last chapter, calm, deliberate, carrying a quiet certainty that most people spend their entire lives searching for. Cristiano Ronaldo moves through it like a man who refuses to accept that there is a last chapter. Jaw set, eyes forward, running like something is chasing him. Or like something is pulling him. If you've ever been the person who keeps showing up when everyone else thinks you should have quit by now, this story is yours. Because what kept these two men standing, through everything the sport and life threw at them, was never what the highlight reels showed. Stay with me, because this is the story behind the story. Rosario, Argentina, 1997. A 10-year-old boy sits in a doctor's office and hears something no child should hear, that his body isn't growing the way it should. Growth hormone deficiency. The implication, delivered clinically, was that his future as an athlete, the only thing he had ever wanted, might be over before it started. His grandmother, Celia, the woman who took him to every practice while his parents worked had died earlier that same year. He was 10 years old, diagnosed with a condition that threatened his dreams, and grieving the person who believed in them most. And this is where everything changes. In that moment, Messi didn't stop. He pointed to the sky, a gesture that has followed him every single time he scores a goal since and he kept going. He has done it thousands of times since. Not for cameras, not for brand deals. For a woman who's no longer here, and for the God he believes placed something inside him that the doctors couldn't measure. Most people see the greatest soccer player who ever lived. What they don't see is the kid who was told he might not make it who carried a cross and a grandmother's memory into every stadium he ever entered. The family was devoutly Catholic. Messi grew up in that faith the way most Argentine families do. Not with noise, but with practice. Woven into everything. A tattoo of Jesus Christ with a crown of thorns on his right arm. A rosary on his forearm that traces the outline of his hometown of Rosario. On his right elbow, a rose window modeled after Barcelona's famous Sagrada Familia Church, the most extraordinary unfinished cathedral in the world. Which, if you think about it, might be the most messy thing imaginable, a tribute to something still being built. He has also, reportedly, worn an image of the Virgin Mary and infant Jesus beneath his jersey, close to the chest, out of sight, exactly the way he keeps everything that matters most. Now travel 3,000 miles northeast, to the island of Madeira, off the coast of Portugal. A different ocean, a different poverty, and a boy who learned something about faith that Messi never had to. Cristiano Ronaldo grew up in a small house with 4 children, a mother who worked as a cook and cleaner, and a father who loved soccer and struggled with alcoholism his entire life. In Funchal, the family was Catholic Bebo Wow. Faith wasn't a choice, it was the water they lived in. But for young Cristiano, faith became personal, not in a church, but in a hospital. His father, Joson C. Diniz Aveiro, died from liver failure in September 2005. Ronaldo was 20 years old, already playing for Manchester United, already becoming famous, and completely alone in a grief that the whole world was watching but nobody really understood. But here's what nobody talks about. That loss didn't break him. By multiple accounts, it was the moment his faith stopped being inherited and started being chosen. He began praying before matches of Woro. Not occasionally, but daily. He started collecting crucifix necklaces, which he has since described as things that bring him closer to God during games. And when he spoke about raising his son, he said he wanted to teach him religious values above everything else. Not trophies, not technique, values. The trophies, it turns out, were never the point. They were just the evidence. 2 boys, 2 islands, both shaped by loss before fame ever arrived. Both Catholic, both carrying something invisible into every match. Something that never showed up in a stat sheet but showed up in everything else. And then, for 20 years, they rose. Sir Alex Ferguson, who built Ronaldo from a teenager into a global icon at Manchester United, once described the contrast between the two this way. "Messi is a fantastic player," he said. "It's like he's wearing slippers when he controls the ball. But Ronaldo could play for Stockport County and score a hat trick. He has everything." Natural grace versus sculpted fire. Stillness versus relentlessness. One man who moves through a match like water, finding its level a whirl, and one who moves through it like he's trying to break physics with his bare hands. But beneath both of them, the same quiet practice, the same gesture toward the sky, the same conversation with something larger than a scoreboard. Most people watched this rivalry and saw competition. What they didn't see was 2 men in the same conversation, just speaking completely different languages. July 2014, Rio de Janeiro, World Cup Final, Argentina versus Germany. Messi played. Germany won, 1 goal, full time. He walked off the Maracanan pitch and was handed the Golden Ball, the award for best player of the tournament. His face, in that moment, was a portrait of a man receiving a gift he desperately didn't want, on the worst night of his professional life. A reporter asked him afterward how he felt. He looked at the trophy in his hands and said almost nothing. There is a story reported in some circles, never fully confirmed that around this period, a pastor had prophesied to Messi that Argentina would win that tournament. When they didn't, it reportedly left him shaken in ways that went beyond soccer. Shaken, not broken. Because what happened next says everything. 8 more years. 8 more years of pointing to the sky. 8 more years of signing of the cross before kickoff. 8 more years of a man refusing to let a loss be the last word on what he was given. Qatar, 2022. Argentina versus France. A final that many now call the greatest in the tournament's history. Argentina twice threw away the lead. Mbappé nearly stole it. And then, impossibly, Argentina won on penalties. Messi stood in the center of the pitch and looked up. And then, in front of a room full of reporters, he said, "I craved this for so long. I knew God would bring this gift to me. I had the feeling that this time was the one." 8 years of faith, delivered in one sentence. Then he pointed to the sky, again. Now here is the sentence that his critics love and his believers carry differently. Cristiano Ronaldo has never won a World Cup. At 41 years old, the oldest outfield player at this tournament by a significant margin. he has scored 8 goals across 5 previous World Cups, and 0 of them in a knockout match. None. The biggest moments, on the biggest stage, have consistently produced the quietest versions of him. And here's the part that should make you lean forward. He knows. He absolutely knows. And he is still here. Where Messi seeks harmony, Ronaldo runs on friction. Where Messi arrived at 2026 with the peace of a man who got what he prayed for, Ronaldo arrived with the hunger of a man who believes the answer is still coming. And when reporters asked him directly whether this would be his final World Cup, no performance, no deflection up, he said, definitely, yes. Which makes what he's doing right now one of the most spiritually interesting things in sports. He's not here for one more trophy. He is here because, by his own framing, walking away before it's finished would be a kind of ingratitude, a refusal of the gift he was given. His faith isn't loud. It shows up in the choices, in the discipline, in a 41-year-old body doing things that 41-year-old bodies are not supposed to do. Whether that ends in glory or in silence is, in this story, almost beside the point. Here is the part most broadcasts will never show you. And it's the part that changes everything. Messi's body is a theological document. His tattoos aren't decoration, they're a map of everything he believes. Jesus, with a crown of thorns on his right arm, the arm that has broken more records than any in the history of the sport. A rosary on his forearm tracing the shape of Rosario, the city that made him. A rose window from the Sagrada Familia on his elbow, a cathedral that has been under construction since 1882 and still isn't finished. A clock representing time. A lotus flower representing rebirth. A handprint, his firstborn son Tiago's pressed into a heart on his calf. He mapped his faith, his family, and his city onto the instrument of his genius. And in a birthday interview in 2024, he said this: "It is clear to me that I was born this way because God chose me. It was a gift He gave me. I tried to take advantage of it. I did everything possible. But without His help, I would not have gotten anywhere." Take that sentence seriously. The most decorated soccer player in history, saying, not for a church, not for a camera, but in a personal interview, that without God, he would not have gotten anywhere. That is not performance. That is the actual architecture of how this man understands himself. Ronaldo's faith speaks differently. It shows up not in tattoos, but in behavior. Charitable donations to hospitals, children's causes, disaster relief, given with a consistency that rarely makes the news because it was never designed to. Daily prayer. A cross necklace worn to feel closer to God during games. A household where, by his own stated intention, his children are raised on values before they are raised on anything else. His mother, Dolores, traveled to the sanctuary of Our Lady of Fatima before the 2016 European Championship to pray for her son. She has spoken openly about faith being the foundation of their family. For Ronaldo, it was never separate from football. It was underneath football, always. Here is what 20 years of this actually produced. Two men who should have been finished, physically, by any medical standard, are standing on the biggest stage their sport has ever built, in their 6th World Cup, drawing more television viewers than almost anything else on Earth. The sport's younger generation, Mbappé, Holland, Vinicius, has the speed and the brilliance. What they do not yet have is what 2 decades of faith and loss and return actually forges in a person. That weight, that particular kind of calm that only comes from having already lost the thing you wanted most, and choosing to believe again anyway. And for millions of people watching Not just soccer fans, but people who have been in their own version of a 2014 final. People carrying their own equivalent of an injury, or a closed door, or a promise that hasn't arrived yet. Something in these two men lands differently than any highlight reel ever could. Because they are not watching greatness, they are watching persistence. And persistence, unlike talent, is something every single person watching can recognize in themselves. Both men will leave this tournament. The score when they do, and whether a trophy goes with them, is the part the world will remember. But it is not the part of this story that matters. What matters is this. A boy in Rosario was told his body might not be enough. He tattooed his faith onto that body and played for 30 more years. A boy in Madeira watched his father die and chose, in the silence of that grief, to believe that the gift he was given was still worth honoring. Neither of them did it alone. Neither of them did it on talent alone. Neither of them, by their own account, did it without God. When Messi points to the sky after a goal, wak, he is pointing to a grandmother he lost at 10. He is pointing to a diagnosis that should have ended everything. He is pointing to 8 years of waiting after 2014. He's saying, without words, I knew this was coming. I knew it because something told me to keep going. When Ronaldo is still running at 41, Avoro still showing up, still refusing the retirement that makes every practical sense in the world. Quark. He is doing exactly what he said, honoring a gift because he believes the person who gave it to him isn't finished yet. That is not a sports story. That is a human story. It is the story of what faith actually looks like when it is not performed for cameras, when it is simply the reason a person gets up and goes back. If you are in the middle of a season where nothing is going right, where the thing you were promised hasn't arrived, where it feels like the world moved on and left you still waiting, let these two men be your answer to the question you've been afraid to ask out loud. The answer is, keep going. Not because the result is guaranteed, but because the people who built their lives on that decision, all the way to the very end, turned out to be the ones the whole world couldn't look away from. Most people will watch this World Cup and see a farewell. You just watched something else entirely.